right. We will be live any moment now. And there we go. Hello, everybody. My name is Chris, and this is my channel, Bar911970. And I always start out my programs by saying thank you for taking the time to listen to what I have to say. And hopefully, we'll get more and more people to climb on board the Think for Yourself train. And that's something if I could teach anything on my channel, it's getting people to think for themselves, never being afraid to question things, for the very least, to verify that something that you've seen or heard or were told is accurate, if not be downright the truth. So verification is always a great way, and we need more and more people to start thinking for themselves. So it is 5:09 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the 27th of February, 2017. I already see some people starting to come in, and I always appreciate that, considering I just sporadically decide to do a live show when I have a thought in my mind. So the fact that people actually even know it's there, let alone want to watch, is a beautiful thing. So John, welcome. Everybody, welcome. And this is the topic. As you can see on the big screen, you're going to see the question why. Now, if we know anything about the media, we know they're very good at telling us what's going on. Same thing with our education department and everything else. We're always told this is the event. We always find that no matter what channel we go to, whatever program it is, it tends to be maybe a different opinion of it, but it'll pretty much be the same story. And one of the biggest things that I notice that most people do not do is ask the question of why something happens. Now, if something happens, obviously, if we're seeing it or being told about it, we know it's there. But they don't really delve in the fact of why something happens. And this is something more and more people need to start incorporating in their thought process of not only seeing or hearing a situation, but to question, why did this particular thing happen? I mean, if you look at, for example, at the medical field, now, obviously, if you need medications to survive, whether they're good or not, if they help you stay alive, that is always a beneficial thing. Side effects aside and everything else, I mean, like I said, if it saves your life, that's a great thing. I mean, I've had inhalers because I've had breathing problems since I was a child. And there were many times in the past that if I didn't have my inhaler, I might have died. So having it is a good thing. But here's the thing that they don't talk about. They don't try and figure out why you have a problem and try and say, okay, like you hear the old comedians back in the day say, it hurts when I move my arm. And the doctor says, well, don't move your arm. But the idea is, if you have a breathing problem, for example, if they just try and say, here's an inhaler, well, they're not fixing the problem. They're not figuring out why you have the breathing problem. They're just saying, here's the solution to your problem to help it go away. Now, let's say you find out through your own research that due to dairy products, really not supposed to be something you should be consuming, you really should look into that if you eliminate the dairy products from your food, that all of a sudden your lungs get better. So finding out why can help you never have the problem. So as good as, for example, an inhaler would be to save your life, if you find out why you had the breathing problem in the first place, well, you would have no need for that life-saving device. And you don't have to worry about the side effects. You don't have to worry about the cost. So this goes with almost anything in life. I mean, I'll give you a prime example. We all know, if you live in the United States of America Corporation, you know that we get money, quote unquote. It's actually currency, and it's not really paper dollars at this point. It's mostly digital currency. But we get our, quote unquote, money from the Fed, the Federal Reserve. But nobody asks, why do we get money, quote unquote, from the Federal Reserve? And I put that in quotes because, like I said, it's not money. If you don't know the difference between currency and money, that's another thing that you should discuss. But think about this. The Federal Reserve is not part of the United States. It's not a federally owned building. Just because it has the word Federal Reserve does not mean it is part of the federal government. I mean, the same could be said about Federal Express. Just because it has the word federal does not mean it's government run. So we basically borrow money, and if you want to go into the full details of how the process works, research it, because my idea is to plant the seed. Your job is to tend to it and make the garden grow. So I can't just show everything. You got to do some research on your own. Otherwise, even here or other places, you're just going to get your information from other people. So I want you to research. But if you look at what's happening is our government, in a nutshell, borrows money from a private-owned bank, which charges us interest. And then we, the people, are the ones that they send the bill to. Now, how many of you out there, and you could say this to any of your friends, any of the people that you think you want to help, quote unquote, awake or learn more about what's going on, ask them this question. Would you like to take, if you had the ability, would you like to take home 100% of the income that you earn? In other words, they won't take away your taxes from it. I'm sure most people would say, yes, I would love to take 100% of what I earned home with me and not give it away to a government. Well, the reason that they take the taxes out of your money is because it happened when the Federal Reserve opened in 1913. If you look at when the taxes came out of your income, it happened because of the Federal Reserve. So before the Federal Reserve, people took home 100% of what they earned. So my question is, why do we need it? Because who does it benefit? Does it benefit us, the people? I mean, look at us as the people. We work to earn a certain amount of pay. Regardless of what you do, you're going to get compensated for it. Most of the time, other than bartering system, you're going to be getting a cash exchange. Now, they take out a certain percentage of that from us immediately. So you're getting less of what you were supposed to be getting earned for your labor. And then, depending on how much of this income that you supposedly make, during tax time, they may take even more. And every time you make purchases, they're always taking money from you. So they're borrowing money, quote unquote, from the Federal Reserve. They're causing us to pay for it. So who does that benefit? It doesn't benefit us because we're getting our money taken from us, and all we're doing is working for a living to pay for bills or put food on the table or put clothes on our children or ourselves. So the government and the Federal Reserve work out a deal so where they get all of this money coming out of nowhere, and again, quote unquote money, and they hand us the bill. And we supposedly have been programmed to say that's okay, and nobody asks why. How many politicians, even Donald Trump, are trying to explain what it is the Federal Reserve is doing? Now, I've heard Donald Trump say that, he doesn't like the Federal Reserve, but he doesn't say why. He doesn't explain to the people, this is why you should not like the Federal Reserve. Because then their system would crumble. And this is what we need to alert people of. Because, the problem with quote-unquote conspiracy theories is, even if they're true, some of them are just so outlandish that if you try and talk to the average person out there about them, they're going to have that normalcy bias and they're going to just ignore it or just shun away from it. But when you talk about their income, they're going to listen. And sometimes you got to just kind of creep the door open a little bit for some people's curiosity to say, you know what, let me walk through and let's see what's on the other side. Some people are just so afraid of that. So what I want you to do is anybody, whether it's your friends, family, coworkers, anything, ask them that question. Would you like to take home 100% of the money you earn? They would say yes. So if we eliminated the Fed and we had our own government create its own money like it used to before the Federal Reserve opened in 1913, well, we wouldn't be borrowing money from anybody, which means we wouldn't have all this interest owed, which means they wouldn't take that extra money out of your pocket, which means now that money could be yours to spend instead of giving it away to somebody else. And if we know anything about any government that takes out taxes, they tend to not use that money wisely. You ever wonder why all politicians are in very fancy homes, live very fancy lifestyles? It's because they are basically celebrating the ability of all the free quote-unquote money they get from the people who do it willingly. So willingly that if somebody says, oh, I don't pay my taxes, most people would make fun of them and mock them. So that's my thing right there, just on the Fed. Now, let me ask you another one. Another question. Why? We tend to buy most of our products that come from China. I mean, if you look at even something like Harley Davidson, where so many people say, oh, I will only buy a Harley Davidson because it's an American made motorcycle. Well, the company is American, but a lot of the products come in from China. GE, same thing. A lot of their parts for their washing machines and things like that come overseas. You ever go to a Walmart? I mean, look at the American flag that most people buy. If you actually look at it, it says on most of them, made in China, which I find pretty ironic that our American flag is actually made in China. So we know that this happens. This is not something that's up for debate. I mean, you just go to any Walmart, you'll see most of the products are made from China. The question is, why? Now, you would have to think, if you were a regular person that started a business, would you make more money and more profit if you made your products and had workers right in the town that you lived in and shipped out wherever you were? Or do you think it would be more profitable for you to have a business in another country and have to have the product shipped in from that other country? Now, a small business would never be able to do that. Only big businesses can do this, and you have to understand why. Well, here are some of the things they don't tell you about. When you have products coming in from, example, China, they don't have to pay the same taxes as we do. They also do not pay their workers as much. So people are always talking about, for example, we need higher wages. We need, like, for example, a $15 minimum wage. Well, all that's going to do is make more businesses take their product and go to Mexico or go to China, because if you actually look at the average salary of people around the world, it's under $5 an hour, sometimes even $5 a day. In some places, it might be the equivalent of $5 a week. Now, that's based on comparison to the US dollar. So they can pay less money overseas, where they kind of don't have the same kind of labor laws as we do. That's why, like, for example, in China, they have something called suicide nets. I haven't talked about this in a while, so we have a lot of new people. So if you ask, what is a suicide net? Well, the Chinese law practices are so bad in some parts of the country that the work environment is just unsafe. They don't make a lot of money. They're forced to do long, incredibly long hours for very small pay, and workers would jump out of windows killing themselves. Now, you'd think the right thing to do would be maybe clean up and make it a safer environment, or give them a raise, or less working hours, or better working conditions. But instead, they buy what's called suicide nets, and they put the nets all around the building so if people jump out, they don't fall to their death. So this is why we get a lot of cheaper products and why we have a lot of businesses leaving the country. So if we actually had better ways of taking away, for example, the taxes and making it fair for the people here, there would be more businesses that thrive. So that's another thing to ask a question why of. Another thing is, we know the government has its hand in everything. We know that they can control the media. In other words, they can regulate, according to the FCC, what can and cannot be said. Now, how far does it go? That depends on how deep you want to learn. What about our education departments? The government has its hand in there, regulating what can be taught. What about healthcare? We already know, thanks to Obamacare, the quote-unquote affordable healthcare program. And we also know that they also regulate what can and cannot be placed in medicines. And yet we have medicines all the time. If you do a Google search of how many medicines have been taken off the shelves and why, you'll see death case after death case. And yet these are the same people, the FDA, approving those, that all of a sudden take them off the shelf after a certain amount of time. So I know people want to make fun of things like sun gazing and things like actually using hemp oil by distilling the hemp oil from the hemp plant and all natural things as crazy talk. But yet the governments will approve medicines. They'll push them through. They'll work for a couple of years until enough people die to the point where they get sued. And by that time, the CEOs have made so much money, they've already left or sold the company to someone else, and they just bankrupt the corporation and they walk away. But meanwhile, families all around the world have lost loved ones. Government controls that. And also the same thing with your food. The government controls what's in your food and what's not in your food. They also say things like certain ingredients, if there's a certain percentage of them that is a smaller than the regulation requires, you don't even have to mention it. And you see with genetically modified foods, there are more and more birth defects. I mean, we don't ask the questions why. Why are they doing these things? Why are they constantly lying to us? Now, so there are people that are going to say, oh, Chris is paranoid. And they have the right to say that if they want to, because, they might not be seeing the things that we research and take the time for. Because it's easy to just turn on CNN, the Clinton News Network, and just listen to everything that they feed you. And you go to school and you believe everything that they tell you because they're professionals, they supposedly know. But all I have to do is ask any person, is the world getting closer together, more united? Are people getting healthier and happier and wealthier? And if the answer is no to the majority of those questions, well, then something's not right. There are more birth defects than ever before. There are more people on antidepressants than ever before. There are more people overweight than ever before. There are more people fighting amongst each other than ever before. More hatred than ever before. So, are they doing a good job? Now, of course, we can always point fingers and say, look what they're doing, look what they're saying, look how they're acting. We have control over everything. And if we choose not to ask the questions why, and just accept things for what they are, or just dismiss them because they don't sound or feel right, well, we're only hurting ourselves. And that's how control can continue for millennia. So Lynn asked a very good question. How can we stop genetically modified foods? Well, don't buy them. Do you think a company can stay in business if no one buys their product? Make more people start being alert to it. So it's very simple. You can protest all you want. You see all these people that are anti-Trumps, the never Trump people. They've been protesting now for over a month and a half, almost 2 months. Is he still in office? Yeah. Have they changed anything? No. All they've done is make themselves look bad, and they give more publicity to say, hey, look, see, this is why we are changing things the way we want to, because look at the people out there that are angry and trying to divide the country. You could protest all you want. All you're doing is giving free advertisement to the business, and that's why they say there is no bad press. But if you stop purchasing their products and stop giving them their currency that they need to survive, well, they either change or they die. There's a reason why most people don't have a Betamax or a rotary phone in their house anymore. It's because people stop purchasing them. That is how you hurt anything. How does a government survive? By making money off the people. If people stop using their credit cards and they stop getting all of these loans and they figure out other ways, and also, like Mr. Hydro guy says, grow your own food. Not always easy, but there's always ways. There are plenty of places that sell things that you can actually grow gardens inside your house. And it's not expensive. I mean, you're talking maybe $100, $200 tops, and you could start a mini little garden in your own home. It depends. You're limited to how your brain thinks. Why do you think they want you docile? Why do you think they want you just paying attention to the television? We need to start asking the questions why. And you notice the media doesn't do that. And even the president, as much as people want to say he's the best, he's not answering these questions, and these are things we need to know. So the more you question, the better off you will be, if at the very least, to verify. I mean, another thing, a lot of people are starting to talk about situations in Antarctica. I've seen so many different channels talking about that there supposedly could be a potential reveal about the biggest pyramid ever in existence that's located under the ice in Antarctica. Whether it's true or not, I can't verify. I've never been to Antarctica, so I can only go by what I'm hearing. But a big trend now is, because there is ice melting in Antarctica, it may reveal one of the biggest pyramids ever found on the Earth. And if you notice, if you search about pyramids, they're all over the world. Most people just think of pyramids, they just think of the 3 pyramids in Gaza and Egypt. There are pyramids in China, there are pyramids in England, there are pyramids all over South America, and they're so soon to potentially have come out a grandest pyramid of all in Antarctica under the ice. Now, people will ask, why do so many people visit the Antarctica? If you actually Google Antarctica, you will see mega amounts of airstrips there. And you'll see people like John Kerry and other political politicians traveling there all the time. Question is, why? And if we don't talk about it, the discussion doesn't get out there. Inquiring minds want to know. Curiosity only kills the cat if they don't pay attention. So I'm not going to make this video that much longer. As usual, I appreciate you guys from actually wanting to be here and listen. I want you to start asking why. I want you to figure out why something is being said, why something happens, how do we avoid things. If you want to solve the world, you have to first understand how it works or understand how it works and ask questions and verify. Otherwise, we're just having people that are running the system telling us that everything's okay and mocking people like me and others. I mean, if you were caught lying about something, what's the first thing you're going to do? You're going to deny it. Then you'll try and make a joke out of it or something. That's what people do. So if you want to rely on the government, who is in regulation of all the things that are making us not closer, not wealthier, not healthier, but quite the opposite, if you want to have them tell us, oh, we're the crazy ones, or that's silly, or whatever, that's fine. But the only people we're hurting is ourselves. So we can continually fight and hate each other. We can continually be divided. We can continue to be distracted or just say, I don't want to rock the boat, and then wonder why things are not getting better. Because if you can honestly tell me the world is getting better, then you can legitimately say I'm a crazy person. And that's fine. And it may be better in your world. But for the world to work properly, it has to be all or nothing. Not a few that benefit. It should be all. And I don't think that's a bad thing. So people should ask why there are 6 people in the world that have more money than half the world combined. Why do they need that? Why do your countries regulate the government's regulations that they do? Why does the media not talk about the truth all the time and are allowed to continually lie to us and still be allowed to air and broadcast? There is always a reason, and there's always a deeper meaning for those willing to search it. Because if you don't, you just see the outer layer, and that's what they want you to see. So as usual, thank you very much for listening to what I have to say. Get yourself out of debt. Get rid of your credit cards. Open up a federal credit union, which is much better than a bank. Start growing your own food. Start thinking for yourself. Get yourself some physical gold and silver. Never be afraid to question things, and always trust your instincts. And don't forget to have your trolls spayed or neutered. I'll see you soon, everybody. Thanks always for listening to what I have to say. Leave your comments, share this, and ask some questions. Let's get this done.